Okay, let's get the meeting started. Want to have a pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call.
Darren Price,
Here.
Leota King,
Present.
Brian Durham is absent, Dale Munson,
Here.
Gary Naylor,
Here.
Robert Stewart,
Here.
Brian Robb,
Here.
Bill Mackey, he's absent, Brian Hensley, Bill McDaniel,
Present.
Jeff Wessling,
Present.
and myself.
I do have news regarding Mr. Hensley, is that I received a letter from the school corporation. Mr. Hensley is no longer with the school corporation, so the school board is going to have to appoint a replacement for him.
Okay.
You see that letter from Mr. Collins, I think about 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Okay, we're to have approval of minutes from the February 23rd, March 25th, and April 22nd meeting, the April 26th special meeting. We'll address them all at one time. We'll take them individually. Bill?
We only got the February 25th. The others aren't done.
Now look, at our age, we can't remember back that far.
I keep good notes and it's recorded.
Do
I
I
make a
have
motion.
any discussion or changes in the minutes as presented?
I make a motion to approve the minutes for February 25th.
Okay, second?
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Get out of the room. Okay, here we go. Okay. Projects, comprehensive plan.
Okay, and what I did send a request was for what I was hoping to have this meeting was identify a couple of low-hanging fruit that I can actually prepare the language pretty readily in some of the parts in the accessory uses. One that's very easy to do at this point would be the home occupations, and this is all home occupations / home-based business. And because this is also getting into anyway, the issue of the economics in Fayette County. Okay, I know there was a bit of a discussion after the last meeting with Gary and Carrie, but if what was in there as far as the animals, the bees, and then the city chickens, wasn't meant that this is all recommended in it. That's just an example of things that are out there. And both Gary and Carrie made it very clear that it's things with the small hoofed animals, no way, it doesn't make sense. But I think for clarity, because I still regularly get questions, and for the city chickens in particular, and then also the beekeeping. I mean, it could be done much more simply than anything else was there. Some places, jurisdictions, they run it through the health department. They have this huge, horrible thing in their health code about it. I think it can be done simply by saying that, okay, if you have because the residential property, for example, with hoofed livestock, and you can apply farm animals, period, with it is none under 3 acres. Now, if you would use, say, an X number based on a household, what they might need as far as, okay, the average household, how many chicken provides how many eggs. And I think one would be to, no roosters. The other part of that would be then that it's just ensuring that this is the rule to keep all the chickens on your property, something along those
Now, is
lines.
this citywide or countywide also?
It would also apply both in the city and then also the rural, also the subdivisions
Do
such
they,
as Pleasant.
okay, they're both the same for the city and county?
Well, they're both covered under the zoning code. So you still have 1 acre and smaller parcels out through different parts of the county. So for me, it would be beneficial is to clear up ambiguity. Because went back a few years ago with a city council member that was on the plan commission when this came up, And I interpreted that no to the city chickens because of the less than 3 acres. Well, the city council members said, well, I don't think so, I disagree, so it's a,
What's this cover, now chickens and what else?
okay. Well, the other one would be the urban beekeeping.
Bees.
Bees, yeah, honeybees.
I'm far more concerned, is there anything in our zoning relating to how many dogs could be in a backyard? I'm an appraiser, and I don't like it. 5 or 6 dogs seem to be quite a bit on a city lot.
Yes, yes it is. Yeah, there's something in there, yeah.
Good.
Okay, so I think those are two, those are fairly simple. Yeah. Okay, then there's some things on the swimming pools and then also the TV towers that Brian, the towers that Brian pointed out.
Okay.
So I think some of those things right there can easily be done. And I pointed out when Brian came in to talk about those, is he made the point that we can have it in the language that's ready. Because every little thing that we pass that's in the form that's amenable to the area plan commission, we don't have a public hearing then, because that'd get really expensive, real fast with all the ads. So we can at least get the different pieces in place. And a couple of the other ones that are a little more extensive still need to be worked on, of course, is with reviewing all the land uses, in particular Gary's concerned with a lot of the special exceptions. Then also I don't know how difficult it would be with the parking, because there is a trend, but in order to do something along the lines of, for example, South Bend gradually worked back. South Bend has no specific parking standards. Everything that comes through that's going to require parking, you need to have an actual plan review for the projects. And then the developer makes the case of this is how many parking spaces we really need for the project, and then they have to make the point to the plan review committee. And for example, that's one of the things people are consistently asking for is reductions in the actual parking. So if we have say a plan review version of it, that's just, this is what you need, well, demonstrate, here's the actual particular standards, and then also the use studies that show for this particular use. At the peak hours, this is how much traffic they actually generate and how much parking spaces they need.
Okay.
Because I think, when I've driven by, I don't think that the new Dollar General has even come close to filling up the parking spaces that they have anytime I've driven by. So,
What do you do, Bill, in a case where, because so many of the stores that I've been seeing in the last 5 years change use within that period of time, does that change the parking situation at all?
yeah, it does, because if it changes something that has a larger number of parking spaces, so you typically is, the highest number of parking spaces you're always going to have is going to be retail. So if it's going to something from a retail to something less intense, it isn't going to need as many parking spaces. But, oh yeah, one other thing is within my email as far as the temporary uses, particularly as far as the one that makes sense is, as you called me about the big monster, single wide mobile home that they added.
That really, we really need to address that.
Yeah, it
puts too much burden on folks on a temporary basis.
So this would be, this would be a place to actually someplace integrate as a temporary use for a accessory dwelling unit, also known as the mother-in-law unit, with the allowing the use of, say, the tiny homes. And the tiny homes are actually constructed to HUD standards.
Anyway, so.
Yeah, anyway. And so that would be one way to provide people a little more flexibility, reduce the expense of, gee, don't know how long we're going to have before, mom and dad are gone. So
They would still go through the same
exactly.
hearing.
Yeah, so the question would be is whether, and this gets into the part with the temporary uses, which ones make sense to make a staff decision, which ones should still require the temporary use here by the Board of Zoning Appeals.
So there's a time limit that they
Yeah.
can stay there?
Yeah, because right now it's a 2-year time limit.
2 years.
Then they have to reapply.
Now, this is normally given for someone to live there while they're building a home or some
Well,
form
you
of
can do it while
residence.
someone's building a home also. But the ones, because I've had some people ask me that question, and I think they're looking for a workaround on getting a mobile home on their property.
Just keep mother over there?
Yeah, well, that's the idea, is you have for care of, health care for a family member.
Better putting her in the basement, I suppose.
Yeah, or especially after everything that people have read
Yeah.
about with the COVID-19, with the way the COVID-19 just raged through.
Has this been a problem, Bill?
Well, if you recall going back to the first cases when they started blowing up in Washington, it was primarily initially is the ones that you didn't stop. They couldn't stop because of like, what are we dealing with here? We don't understand what we're dealing with. We're primarily in the nursing homes. So it's a lot of people are now, there's more people are, well, they've always been concerned about putting family members in nursing homes, but I think there's even more concern over it now. But I think that's one right there with those temporary uses also. I mean, take a look at. Like I said, these are things that we can get in place, we can all have them in place.
Is a tiny home half the price of our minimum square foot mobile home now?
Well, what it is the actual definition then for a tiny home, or we can take it down to the level of the tiny home, but the actual tiny homes, because they meet all the building code square footage requirements for every use in it. It's finally now part of the actual residential code. And I think it might be something like 300 square feet.
Yeah,
So,
but are they
That's a camper,
cost-wise?
basically.
I mean-
but it's built to a higher standard than a camper, yeah.
Yeah, but I think the main issue is the cost burden
Yeah,
on folks having to buy a 14 by 70 house trailer, mobile
Yeah,
home,
1,080 square feet of living space.
versus
Yeah.
300 square feet.
And for example, another big
Hey,
part of that
we're dealing
is,
with grandma's money here,
Yeah.
okay?
because another big part of
She's
the-
loaded, that's why they want her to live with
Yeah,
them.
because another big part of the expense for the Eklunds was that, so what they did, because they had to stack the piers. So what they did to stack the piers, there's three piers inside, in the middle, on the exterior, and then the center line. So what they had in this case was they just dug 3 linear footings to full length. That's a lot, that's a lot of money, for that much concrete. And then they still have to then stack the piers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's, yeah. Yeah, so, and it's, as you've mentioned in the past, you've always, you've shown a lot of concern about, things
Minimum
we're
lot
doing, that there are a
size,
lot of additional extra costs that are shooting on people, financial
Yeah.
burden.
do we have a minimum lot size to do this?
It could go in any place that you allow an actual residential use. So any place that you have a house, well, they could put the tiny home on it as an accessory dwelling use, which if you're living in the town, they could conceivably get, someone wants one for a family member in, say, let's pick out, say Regency Place, up in that area. Well, so if they want one for mom and dad, well, you gotta put in a 1,080 square foot mobile home instead of something much, much smaller with a much less of a, say, visual impact.
Visual impact as well.
Do the subdivision covenants override area planning, or they have to prove it with you?
Well, what it comes into is that because that might be a problem with some of the actual covenants. Because we don't have the authority, because covenants, of course,
Yeah, they set
Pri-
the
the private
subdivision, they got
agreement.
covenants, now area planning said, wait a minute, you can't do that.
Yeah, the only ones that could really set something aside in the covenants are through courts or state legislatures and the federal government, federal legislature. But yeah, you don't have the authority at the local level. Even when some of them are absolutely ridiculous.
So if their covenants say they can get by with 720 square feet, you're saying, wait, we want 1,050, they can say, no, our covenant, we can override you.
Yeah, they can actually have something more restrictive than the zoning code that came in. But the other one we get into based on the actual age of the subdivision, because most of our subdivisions were actually platted prior to 1993. But like I said, they can be more restrictive. For example, if you remember Gary, when I first started, when the Mason McGraw came in, because someone built this huge monster pole barn and placed it much closer than the way beyond what they could do with the covenants. Nor did they go through Mr. McGraw to get it approved. And then they put it closer, well, it was in line with the, thank goodness it was my predecessor who approved it. But what happened was, so it was closer and then was larger in violation of the covenants. But, we don't enforce the covenants, so unfortunately we had to inform Mr. McGraw that, well, what you have to do is that you gotta take them to court and have it removed.
Yeah.
You remember that now?
I bet he loves you.
Yeah. Actually, I developed a really good working relationship with
I
Mr.
know. Mason's a pretty good guy.
I
right?
like Mason.
Yeah, got along with him fine.
Yeah, I miss not having him around.
Yeah,
He's a good guy.
he's very reasonable when you really got talking to him.
All he ever wanted was, I just don't want to be singled out. And so he
Sure.
always asked the reason why.
Yeah.
But, if y'all just like me to move on with those, and then with some of the smaller ones that are a little easier ones to do, won't do that. If you trust me to use my own judgment, but I can do that. And we have one other thing that's really related to this. It'd be what I sent everybody about from Bill's observation after Bruce Lowell's public hearing, was that now that the Area Plan Commission does not make the recommendations to the zoning board, if it be possible to consider then swapping the times on the APC and the BZA, just swapping the 7 and 7:30 starting time. Because as Bill pointed out, it really wasn't necessarily fair to Mr. Full to have him sitting there all that time, especially if someone who's a petitioner in front of the BZA, and we end up with a long, involved public hearing.
Is there a problem with the BZA meeting at 6 o'clock ahead of us?
Well, we could, but I think some of it, all it would do would just shift it back the other night. This would be the easiest one, is just,
Yeah, so we don't have to stay till 9 o'clock over some issue.
yeah. But, if it's gonna be to stay here till 9 o'clock those would primarily be the longer days you'd have anyway. Would be, say, a zoning code change.
Public hearing.
Zoning code, or, public hearing, or an unpopular, zoning map amendment, rezone. And then you'd say, then you have a petition for the zoning board, a fairly simple petition, and then they have to wait, God knows how long, until the Area Plan Commission gets through their petition.
Well, would you want to present to BZA if they wanted to meet at 6? They don't have to wait till 7:30, would they?
Well, I'd have to go, part of the one's easy, it's already set up that way, 7 and 7:30. I think we need to really get an input also from Channel 3.
Oh,
Whatever time you want to.
Okay, all right. But I'll tell you something, there's no problem there. Then it's just the city council things are up, so there's no problem with availability. So I think probably a half hour before, but I can check to see, make sure there's no problem.
6:30, yeah, we start at 6:30 and we take over after 7, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But,
No problem.
how's that work for you, Bill?
That works.
Okay.
Like I said, it's mainly for the people.
Yeah.
Just here with the petition.
We'll have to get notice to all media outlets of this.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
For me though, I would rather switch just 7:30 and leave
Okay,
it the way it
because,
is.
because you with work, that could be
That's
problematic.
what I was
Since you're
wondering
both the planning
about.
commission and the
I
zoning
think
board.
that's why that was set up that way.
Yeah.
It's because of the people working
Yeah,
that's on the board, not myself, something like that.
yeah.
I'd rather-
And because I know it also affects you, do you have a problem with either way? Or a preference?
No.
No preference.
So, do we have to re-advertise everything?
Well, I just
if
have
we
to send
swap,
out, I just have
or
to send
you
out.
just send a notice?
You have to treat it as if they're gonna be special meetings essentially, so you have to give notice to the media, to the newspaper, give them a list of them and do it, just like you do at the beginning of the year.
At the beginning of the year, you have to redo, okay.
And so-
Even if we're keeping the same times, we're just flopping?
You're correct, well, we
Okay.
still have to legally notify them that this has changed and these are going to be the times of the
Most of our
meetings.
meetings are like quick in and out, go.
Yeah.
I can't remember the last one that lasted over 15 minutes.
Right. I mean, there's an argument to be made, I've been thinking about this, there's almost an argument to be made that when there's nothing on the agenda, that you could just cancel the meeting.
Which normally we do.
Yeah.
That's what I wondered, ahead of
But how
time
would we
even.
know they canceled the meeting? Are we to be here at 7:15, 7:30?
Well, the way I would cancel the meeting would be because I'm required for someone to get on the agenda for the BZA. It's 3 weeks before the meeting.
So you have plenty of notice.
Yeah, so if I don't have the notice,
If if APC's second though, we can't move it up earlier than
No,
7:30.
it has to be at 7:30, yeah.
Just like ours, you guys, like last time, you didn't have a forum, so you guys were out. And
You couldn't meet
20
till,
minutes, we couldn't.
Yeah.
meet.
yeah.
But like I said, normally we're in and out, and there'd be no conflict at all. I can't, like I said, I can't remember. the last
Well, I don't see why we can't try it for the rest of the year at least and see how it works and,
with it just a swap,
yeah, with just a swap. I'd make that motion that we ask Bill to re-advertise our meeting times. APC will be meeting at 7:30, BZA at 7 for the remainder of the year. And we'll try that and see how it works out.
I think it'd be good.
I'll second the motion.
Less confusion right now, that way.
but yeah, and if it looks as though it would be, say, preferable to say maybe try to start a half hour before that, well, then again, we'd have to take into consideration that with people's work schedules.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, like I said, because with Darren on both is like I said, it could cause problems.
But and also if the APC looks at a long meeting, we may need to, the potential for a long meeting, we may need to look towards having a special meeting at a different night, maybe, and go at 7, maybe. At a different night.
I mean, you can have a special meeting, all you have to do is get a 48-hour notice,
Yeah.
excluding weekends and holidays. And so, yeah, it's.
I mean, like we did with the public hearing
Sure.
for the CAFO ordinance, we had a special night meeting.
Yeah, and so the only thing then, of course, if it's a public hearing, then we need to meet the requirements of the Indiana code.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so,
Okay. Any more questions on the comprehensive? Remove the zoning code?
we
Do we
need
need to vote on that?
to vote on that motion.
On accepting the comprehensive plan?
No, changing the
Oh, you've got
times.
a motion on the floor, okay, okay. Have a motion and a second, right? Okay. All those, you want to read the names off?
Again,
Okay.
Darren Price,
Yes.
Leota,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Mr. Stewart,
Yes.
Brian Robb.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay, all right. And the one other thing then is with the letter from Brian, has everybody read the letter that Brian wrote to the county council? Explain the budget request.
I guess the only question I have, Bill,
Yep.
and since Brian's not here, I'll ask you. He told me the other day that you and him had worked through the budget.
Yeah.
The letter talks about us addressing our fees
Yeah.
schedule. Do we have some type of a time frame when we're going to address the fee schedule? I think it would behoove us to, as a board, to give something solid to the council,
Yeah.
the county council, of, okay, we want to have these fees before the commissioners.
I've worked through some things and and because I've given a lot of thought to this and I've run through various aspects of it, so I don't think it would be very difficult for me to do that. Okay, then of course it would then be, adopted then as a county ordinance, county fee ordinance. The main ones we just have to deal with is having language in there that would actually apply until we can actually excise fees out of the building code and then excise fees out of the zoning code. Because that's and the big one is with the building code is you want them out of the building code, but it's also an opportunity to then, with the city and the county, then adopt the most recent model ordinance for the state of Indiana for adopting the building code. Because it's what we have, since 1993 is the language that was used, and it's changed quite a bit since then. The state of Indiana really wants these fees out of it.
Can we realistically be ready to present something to the commissioners by January?
Oh, that's not a problem at all. So I think because
Because the commissioners will address that, won't they, Jeff? Okay, it won't be or will the council have to do the money?
We have to set the budget.
yeah,
You're talking about increasing the fees?
Yes. Is that a council for county or is that commissioners? I think it's
That's
commissioners.
council for the budget.
Well, it'll be an ordinance. I mean, we would essentially be modifying our zoning ordinance.
yeah.
So I think it'd be treated just like any other zoning ordinance. So it'd have to be both. And we have to
City
have a public
council
hearing.
and
City council and commissioners.
commissioners, yes.
Because we've already talked a little bit about, okay, use a base fee, and depending upon the actual size, and then also the number of inspections that's actually required, and then the fees based on that. And some of them are reasonable and maintain the same, but when you consider that, I went through inspections with Brian, and so at times, I might do 2 or 3 things at once. But it's, and it's Brian goes, oh, what, see, some of these inspections, you spend, maybe 2 hours on them? So, in an ideal world, I would.
Yeah.
In an ideal world, I would spend 2 hours on them. But,
You haven't found that ideal world yet, have you?
no. Worked out pretty good with that when I had help. But, so the amount of time with it. So conceivably is, if someone's building a basement, there's 12 inspections in place.
Just for the basement?
Well, no, for the entire
Oh,
project.
for the intern,
Yeah,
okay.
So, the last time I actually ran the math, and I've had a couple of raises since then, it was just under $30 if you're looking at the mileage that year, the fuel costs, the mileage, the vehicle maintenance costs, my time, it goes everything from the average time talking to a customer, the amount of time I put into the reviewing, the amount of time I put into processing a permit. So, that right there is probably about an hour. Then you look at the amount of time, then you have to look at on the average of how much time I'm putting in driving to the site. Because I've had some where I'm up in, on the extreme cases up in, there's places that are, the extreme parts of the county there's times where it takes me about a half hour to get from one point to another. Then there's been days where I've had to go then from northwest Posey down to southwest, Jackson. It doesn't happen a lot, but that is a lot of driving.
It's possible.
Yeah, it's possible, and it has in the past.
So are you going to be presenting this to county council, Bill?
Yeah, so, I have to submit everything tomorrow. So I was hoping Brian was gonna be here because he was going to sign it.
Well, my question is, how much funds are we requesting?
Well, that's on the, which is why I have the actual, so the
That's
board.
the 99.8?
Yeah, so that's right here, you got the total. Yeah. And the primary one behind that are 2 items. It's so that I won't have to keep coming back to the commissioners to pay our attorney fees.
Well, what was the previous budget?
Well, I don't have that right in front of me right there, but, well, okay, this is probably.
About
an increase. Well,
$40,000 increase, wasn't it, Bill?
Yeah,
Isn't it 40 plus?
yeah.
I forget what Brian told me the other day
Yeah.
when I saw him.
Yeah, but there's a significant jump, but it's primarily with the building inspector, and then also going from $2,500 to $15,000 for our attorney.
Well,
Because we blow past that on a quarterly basis. This last quarter, we blew past that. And it's because we're gonna request, and we're gonna rely, because the more active and the area plan commission is gonna be on the ordinance and then also the comprehensive plan, the more we're gonna end up needing to rely rely on Jeff. I'm not sure he can do that.
Yes.
He's
with
worth
the-
every penny, guys.
I agree.
It's worth more than that, Jeff.
It-
You're
that's-
worth more than that.
It's okay to do that, because we can cut him from the county budget to put it in this budget, okay? We can cut him at the other end. We can make-
Make up for it.
Bill, I don't know what the past history is, or past
Like
agreements
a lawyer there,
between
man.
the county and city. But
Good to me.
is there any opportunity maybe for the city to share in the inspector's fees?
I would think it makes sense. One that would make sense is since they also have a code enforcement official. Because what would make sense is combining both the code enforcement and then also the building official. In an ideal world, that you would cover both in it, and then it would be the city and the county position. Because the bulk of both complaints and then you got zoning code violations and the bulk of the permits and the bulk of the inspections and the cost involved are within the
That's a
city.
$50 fine.
Are within the city limits.
Okay. Brian, do you have your code enforcer? That's a part-time position right now, isn't it?
No, it's gonna be a full-time position.
Okay.
Oh, it's going to be? Oh, okay.
That's been the latest request, is that.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So that wouldn't work to share,
Not for the code enforcement.
yeah.
Yeah, but I think that,
Had we thought about it, maybe that might have been, but I think it's already kind of a done deal.
but-
so.
well, I think that
Okay.
it's something we can, look forward, more toward for the next year's budget.
I think during the winter, and I don't want to speak for the mayor or the council, but I think during the winter, I think you can probably get some help. Maybe if you stockpile, because he'll slow down a little bit during the winter.
Yeah.
He who, the
The
code enforcement?
Yeah, so
Okay.
you might be able to get some assistance a little bit there, but not, I wouldn't rely on it year round. I mean, he's gonna be busy, and he has been busy, he's doing a great job.
Yeah, because I noticed that, because I've noticed, oh, by the way, up on Myers Street, that place that's overgrown. I drive by it every day.
How could we incorporate those two, maybe 1.5 people?
I don't know. It's something to talk to the mayor. and
Because we
council
need
about.
code enforcement in the county as well.
We also need a nuisance code in the county.
We are well, why have a nuisance in ordinance if you don't have anybody to
Oh,
enforce it?
exactly, we need both.
I mean,
Any ordinance for that matter.
exactly, yeah, why have any ordinances that can't be enforced? And,
Yeah.
Well, that's a good
and if we
question.
don't put the personnel in place to enforce those ordinances, there's really no reason to have the ordinances. And,
Yeah, because you need. the
and I
person in
think that's
place,
why
you
I
also need-
balked so much
You also need the,
as commissioner, because I knew we couldn't enforce it. We didn't have any way of enforcing them.
yeah,
So why put laws on the books that
until you can do it.
are a waste?
Or until you know what the penalty is by breaking enforcement.
But, so I don't know, I mean, I think that's probably, as you're, I think the mayor is trying to grow that,
We tried several, just since I've been on the council and stuff, we tried several ways to do it, and it just wasn't working. Now, the latest one, we think is a real positive, and also it's got to do with the right individual that's doing it. That's the biggest part of it.
that's a
We
big
think
part.
we found that individual to do this, and the approach is a lot different than what it was before. It's more of a positive approach, instead of just going and dictating something and doing stuff. And we've seen better results with that going forward and stuff. And we're just getting started, but he's been phenomenal from what we tried to do when I first started this and stuff, not working, and he's had great results. So
Good.
Yeah, and the other one with the amount for the building inspectors, because the odds are, if you want someone who has experience and someone who's gonna be familiar with the building codes is, you need more than the county, beginning to pay up to nine something an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I thought along is it would be, it could potentially be a decent retirement gig for a retired contractor.
Well, but I guess what I'm thinking is, we have a lot of construction out there that's not permitted, probably. And I think
I have no doubt about that.
I think that's part of the building inspectors,
Yeah.
would be part of his or her responsibility, to answer those calls of questions.
Oh, exactly. Well, another thing that has happened is.
Where you don't have that time.
No. Well, one thing that happened is that when Mr. Whitecotton worked for me, and is also when Mr. Crawford worked for me, is that they'd get the calls, and then it just happened to be, it's like, they'd be driving a little bit more. It's like, oh crap, I don't think they got a permit for that. So a lot of things were actually caught by actually having your
Out driving.
your official out driving.
Yeah. So I guess what I was thinking, if we could, if somehow we could incorporate your one person with our one person, and the city would share with maybe the cost of that inspector as well, then the code enforcement team / building inspector would have a two-man team, so to speak.
Yeah, well, because another thing would happen in conjunction with the, okay, these are the fees. These are what it actually cost us. Well, this is what we need to do to generate. So if we actually have the adequate fees, what is it actually going to generate over what's...
And that's what, I guess I'm very much interested in seeing before we go jumping into this too far, but at least we need to, I think we need to guarantee or promise the council and the commissioners that we're going to have these fee ordinances to them in a timely fashion to address, so that we can start recouping those costs.
because this is...
Because I've seen how government works. I mean, we sit here and we talk about things, and then 5 years later, we never have done anything on that, what we talked about.
Politics.
Yeah, because the thing that you're mentioning right there is the reflecting the fees. And that was one of the big points that Gier made with the training session.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Don't use somebody else's as what you're, as to base your fees on, but you can even base it on what the actual the cost.
Costs here in this county.
What the actual cost of the service is.
Yeah. So that's my only concern. I'd like to see this board officially create some deadlines for us to create those fees if we're going to go to the council and ask for more money.
The council's setting their budget now, aren't they, for next year?
That's what this is for, yes.
Because we know it's late to get all this in place for this year, unless of course we get the, depending upon what the council's pleasure is regarding the budget request. But it's also the expectation that we are going to work on it and doing something to generate more fees. And as much as for a long time, as much as I'd like to have someone to handle the building inspections and code enforcement, but every year since they eliminated the line item for that position, every year I keep adding it, and every year they say no, so I'll just keep adding it until something happens and we can finally get it done.
Bill, we know to the commissioners that there's money available for things that have been put on the back burner for COVID-19. Would this be something that could be looking at that?
I really don't know, because I don't know what...
I would discourage that.
People going on properties and things has been something...
Because that's a one-time pot.
Yeah.
How you going to pay for it next year and the year after?
It's kind of like one of the things you ideally should not do is, because if you use grants for an employee, well, once the grant runs out, then what are you going to do then as far as for paying the individual?
The county already has a lot of salaries paid by grants,
Yeah.
and we've been very fortunate that they haven't
Been
run
very
out.
fortunate.
By the same token,
Because
you
a lot
can
of the
budget
time-
what you want this year, it doesn't mean it's going to be there next year for you either. Because it depends on taxes, and if people not paying their taxes, you got a problem.
But, since we are addressing it for next year's budget, if we could attach to this letter that, hey, the board is planning on having, for instance, a fees ordinance before the commissioners and the city council by their first meeting in January, then maybe that would hold a little more weight with the county council and or something of that nature.
Yeah, well,
I know it's
considering
frustrating.
Brian's, well, it's an editable version what Brian Brian sent me, so I can add that language in there.
I mean, is that doable? I mean,
Sooner the better.
Yeah.
I'd love to see us have it before then, but at least that gives us 6 months to work on it and
You're
get a
wanting to add a
hearing.
code enforcer on with the inspector?
Yeah, because that was what we had.
He was a building inspector slash code enforcement,
So
wasn't
that
he?
would be
That's
an
the primary ones, is
additional,
also
additional
responsible.
budget matter that you need to look at?
Well, the job description is both.
Yeah.
The building inspector slash
Already
code enforcement
created.
official. So when the position was created,
Okay, let's get it straight. You're wanting one man to serve both places, or you're two men?
yeah, right now, one person for both. Because that's what, well, with Mr. Crawford, when he started, was on a part-time basis. But there's some responsibility for both. And then when Mr. Whitecott worked for me originally as a part-time, then as a full-time, he helped with that.
Are you wanting full-time or part-time?
Ideally full-time, but that would look at what you're gonna end up having with the, that would be ideal. But also, that's, not as much per hour as far as someone, so I don't know how that effect would be. So,
I would say if we could get at least dollars for part-time next year, that would give maybe the commissioners a chance to talk with the mayor on how the new code enforcement is working out
because the.
deal, and then maybe trying to create some interlocal agreement to join forces and.
Yeah, because what I did was, it was approximately that same number that with, when I worked things out with Brian, is that because even after a full-time at $15 an hour would land someone at about $26,000.
It could be difficult because it took us quite some time to get us a part-time maintenance man for the courthouse.
Yeah.
And it's become a problem. Okay, you through with that now?
Yep.
You voted on it, okay?
So I'll go ahead, and then that's one of the other things I'll have ready as soon as I can also for the,
Need anything on rules of procedure, Bill?
Does that?
that's pretty much the discussion we have with
Does
the
that need
timing.
voted on what he wants to add to that?
Do
Or can it just?
you want to
Oh,
vote on the proposed budget to send to, make it official?
Yeah, if you would.
Mr. President, or Mr. Vice President, I make a motion to, that the APC take this budget proposal and present it to the county council for the 2022 year's budget,
You want that letter sent with it?
and send the letter with it also,
And I will drop that off tomorrow,
With the additional language.
with the additional language of the permit.
the fee language.
I'll second.
Okay, all those, go ahead and read off the roll call.
Darren Price,
Yes.
Leota,
Yes.
Dale Munson,
Yes.
Gary Naylor,
Yes.
Mr. Stewart,
Yes.
Ryan Robb.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay.
Motion, good.
Okay. And you'll be presenting it, Bill?
Yeah, I'll be presenting. I also asked Brian is when it comes time to actually be in front of the, yourself and the rest of the county council to please join me.
Okay.
I think that'd be good.
Yeah.
And any other board members for that
Any
matter,
other-
wouldn't
any
it,
other
Bill?
board members.
To show support,
Yeah.
if we can.
And, yep, and now I guess it's just on to the director's report.
Any rules of procedure?
Well, we had,
We
that was
already
when we
took care
talked
of that
about
already.
swapping the time.
We didn't get that approved ahead of time, okay.
All right. The only
By the
thing,
book here.
Mr. President, if I may, I have been listening over the last conversations of the CAFO ordinance, and I'd just like to make it part of public notes. There has been a big discussion over water quantity with the CAFO ordinance, and thinking through what I've been listening to and kind of trying to come to reason with it. I've always thought that I've tried to be a person of compromise when it comes to government and whatnot. And I can see the need for us to address the water quantity because we do have pockets of the county that have less water or more water problems, quantity problems than other parts of the county. However, I don't feel that this should be, there's a need for us to address it in individual parts of our zoning code. I wouldn't be opposed to us looking at some type of a water quantity rule or requirement for all permitted projects outside central water. If a business is drilling a well, they ought to have to meet the same requirements as, or make sure that they don't damage the neighbors, or a house. If we're going to build another house next to 5 others, they should be required to make sure they're not going to hinder their neighbors' water quantity. Now, how we do that, I haven't quite got that direction, but I thought maybe, I don't know if we could talk with maybe Butler Fairman, our engineering firm that is under contract with the county for services, to maybe get some ideas from their hydrology department.
Yeah, because it might make it also easier for them to actually have an idea of anything out there, other parts of the country, particularly something that might be more comparable to Indiana.
There's no sense in reinventing the wheel if we don't have to, if the wheel's already out there.
You do well tests on all new construction on homes anyway, don't we? To check the water quality and make sure the water flows and everything like that?
Well, we just check to make sure that there is water flowing.
I mean, that in comparison to 5,000 hogs might be a little different.
Yeah, well, basically, part of what it is, you go in and you make sure it's running and you sink all the systems.
Yeah, I mean, we already do the test
and
on
that
the
the
water.
toilet's flush.
No, we don't. We don't do any quantity tests.
We just make sure everything's functioning.
Yes.
And that mine still functions too.
So, I mean,
So what are you asking to do different than what we're already doing as far as homes?
we are not testing for quantity currently.
You wanna know how much water I got in my well?
I want to make sure that if you put in a new house and drill a new well, you're not going to impede on your neighbor's wells. The same as you're saying that I shouldn't impede by building a hog barn on my neighbor's
10,000 hogs ain't like 4 people living in a
Oh,
four-story
yes
house.
it is. Yes it is.
No, I'm afraid not.
When you go to Columbia Township, it is.
On water use?
Yes, it is.
You don't use any more water for 10,000 hogs than I would for 2 kids?
No, I'm saying
He's talking about the aggregate effect.
the effect.
Then what do we have an expert here on water levels?
That's why Gary made mention to, is there anything out there?
Because the water table is there.
It's not in Columbia Township. It's not in Harrisburg.
Well, it is in my place. How much water do you want? I'm gonna live out of Harrisburg.
There are places out there.
In Columbia Township that run out.
Of course you do.
And there's a house in Harrisburg right now that hauls water almost all year long to
Well,
their well.
because they're not affecting my water any.
But somebody's affecting theirs.
Because that way when they built it, probably because there wasn't water there.
We don't know.
I live in Dungrazen. My water where I'm at, I have plenty. Up here, they haul water. Same subdivision, but I'm downhill from where they are.
But that's
The
the
water level's
point.
still there. They just had to dig a deeper well.
But that's the point. A residential well can affect other residents just the same as any commercial business can.
Well, see, we put a well in one time, and had a nice spring going, and everything was great until that well went dry, and the guy complained, and my dad told them, I said, when I know what goes on beneath that ground, I'll be God instead of a plumber, okay? And I'm not God, okay, about water levels, but when you have water, you got it, but I can't see the comparison between a hog farm and a house. It just doesn't relate to me.
Okay. But that's where I'm at. I'm not opposed to addressing water quantity throughout the county as a whole. Anyone that builds anything.
Didn't you mention that, Bill, when you're going through the plan? Like, I've heard you, I think, like when people were building out in Columbia, you kind of questioned.
Well, what I have done when people are building houses, or talking about building a house in an area that I know has water quantity problems.
Sure.
I would say, well, before you build anything, you probably want to make sure that there's actually water before you build anything. I have actually had, on a rare occasion, I actually have someone say, you want to check that area right there, because it's, especially uplands, you got a water problem. He goes, yep, that's what we're looking at before we make a decision. So I'm always happy when someone is doing all their homework.
But we
like
do
that.
sit on aquifer, don't we?
Yeah. And there's and that when you get down into Columbia, if you're down in the stream basins, there's all kinds of water. But once you get up on those uplands, you can't get water to save your
Then you
life.
drill a 300-foot well instead of a 60-foot well.
Yep. At times, and most people, if they do.
The water's
they-
there,
they-
you're just
they
not getting
drill.
to it. It's that simple.
Like you said, not for 10,000 hogs. I mean, that's a completely different scenario. But it still affects them, it's just not a well.
Okay.
That's all I had on the zoning, as far as zoning.
So,
Director?
Director's report, gave everybody.
Okay. Some more business? Have a
No more business?
motion for adjournment?
Well, actually, got to vote on the director's
Yeah.
report.
Oh, okay.
That's
Do I have
I make a motion to approve the director's report.
a second?
Second.
I'll read off the names.
Darren,
Yes.
Leota,
Yes.
Gail,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Mr. Stewart,
Yes.
and Brian.
Yes.
Okay. Passed. Okay, good job, Bill. Now, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you all for coming.
now declare the BZA for meeting for 6/24/21 to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. Roll call, please.
Harry Simpkins. Bill Crawford.
Here.
Jeff Fisher. Darren Price.
Here.
And Leota King.
Here.
Bill McDaniel.
Present.
Jeff Westling, and myself.
Okay, now we'll discuss the changing of the meeting. Anybody have any comments on, we all discussed it, heard the discussion. I'll take a motion to move it, flip-flop it.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right, I've been a motion made properly seconded to swap the meetings with the BZA and the APC. The BZA will be at 7 o'clock and the APC will be at 7:30. Once approved.
Okay, and we do something then also with the, related to the, unless there's something critical, say as far as minutes, unless there's something critical that has to be in front of the BZA, if there is no scheduled public hearings, about just making it automatic to not schedule the BZA to set the meeting aside.
Okay, so if there's no agenda for the BZA, then we'll automatically allow Bill to cancel it and reschedule for next month. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Okay, director's report.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion made and properly seconded to approve the director's report. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, any other discussion? Nope. Okay,
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
motion made, properly seconded to adjourn. Meeting adjourned.